Good evening, everybody, and thank you very much for coming. What I think is going to be one of the most, really, an evening when everyone will get something out of it. That's the important thing to be at all these sort of seminars. You want to get something out of it. But another very important thing is the fact that you interact with our speakers. We want to get as many questions as possible. They're going to talk among themselves, and what they're actually going to do is they're going to introduce their own subjects. But I think I'd like to leave the questions until near the end. I think it's a fantastic subject, and I know we're going to get a lot of questions. First of all, I'd like to thank Edmund Manny for allowing us to use this fantastic facility. To thank Tattersalls for running the show, which I think is a brilliant show, one of the best in Ireland. He's sitting over there, and you can ask him 100 questions if you want afterwards. But it is a fantastic show, and as you walk around the show, it looks brilliant. The showing rings are fantastic. The jumping rings are fantastic. It's a great show. And I think, everybody comes here, goes away, and they feel as though they've had an experience, and they feel as though the horses have improved by jumping here and by showing here. The quality of the judging is always excellent, and I think it's a competitive show, and to win here, when you know you've won here, you know you've won. And that's really what it's all about. I think I'd like to move on now to Showing Ireland. Showing Ireland was started by a group of enthusiasts. We decided we wanted to really sort of push on to promote the Irish show horse, to safeguard the showing classes in Ireland and the shows throughout Ireland. And on that note, the secondaries through all the shows in Ireland have been fantastic. This year we had 9 shows, and every one of the secondaries really interacted. And this is the thing that hasn't been done before. This is a championship of all the shows in Ireland. And at the class you're going to see tomorrow, everybody dressed up in hunting gear, I think will be one of the best classes that you will see in Ireland this year. But also we want to do one other thing. We want to work closely with the HSI and the IDS to develop ways we can improve the sport and all aspects of the sport. We ourselves are interested in showing, but a show horse can do 1,000 things. It can be an event, it can be a show jump, it can be anything. But you always know when you buy a show horse, you bought a beautiful horse. Beautiful mover, and that's why we want showing to continue in Ireland and to push on and to really be an important discipline, because that's what it is. It's a separate discipline. You get eventing, show jumping, dressage. Showing is a discipline. It's ridden in a separate way. The people who ride it are highly skilled, and they know exactly how to ride a horse and produce him to the absolute best. And I think we have also gone down varying routes, talked to the RSA about judging and all sorts of other areas, but that's actually a different subject. We've got great shows throughout the country, and I think Showing Ireland, what we decided to do was set up a limited company so that we will be a formal organisation. So we set up a limited company by guarantee, and we've got a series of members, and anybody who wants to become a member of Showing Ireland, who wants to get involved in the sport of Showing Ireland, that's not a problem. Get on to either of the secretaries or get onto the website and get on about it. The speakers, well, what can I say about the speakers? I think we've assembled tonight probably a panel of speakers who would be unparalleled in any class, any seminar that's given about showing, because they're all the tops in their field. They're all different areas. They know what they're talking about, and I know from last year they were very, very forthcoming in the questions and answers, and there was no question that it is a silly question, because you can rest assured there's 4 other people in this audience who want to ask the same question, don't want to do it. So really the most important part of the whole thing is the interaction with the team here. And they are going to introduce their own subjects, and you're going to hear no more from me, but the first speaker is going to be Jane Davis. We were absolutely delighted to have Connolly as a sponsor of the shows. There are 9 shows throughout the country that cover the whole country, from the north, south, east and west. And the winner, champion, the reserve champion, the 4-year-old champion, always come straight through to the final here. It's going to be a great day tomorrow. Everybody in hunting gear and everybody wants to win. And there's also a prize for the best amateur. And also an interesting thing we decided to do, and that is people who haven't actually won a prize here are going to be part of a prize fund of 750, which will be divided among them. So it'll be really worth their while to actually turn up and enjoy the day. And so what I'm going to do now is the first speaker I'm going to introduce is Jane Davis from Red Mills. She rides herself, she show rides herself. She's a fantastic supporter of showing, as are Connolly's in every single part of Ireland, every single event in Ireland, you'll see a Connolly name. And I think it's brilliant that they support the whole equestrian industry right across the country. And I think the Connolly family have done fantastic for the whole sport of horses in Ireland. So I'm not going to say any more. You're going to hear too much more out of me. But everybody will introduce a separate subject. The first person I'm going to introduce is Jane Davis.
Thanks a million, Angus. I'm going to keep this very short and sweet. I think for Red Mills, Connolly's Red Mills, it's a 5th generation family business. As most of you know, it's based in Goresbridge in County Kilkenny. Started, it's 112 years now in existence, and has grown into a huge global business. We're exporting equine feed all over the world, but we remain rooted in rural Ireland. A huge principle of everything that we do in manufacturing our products comes down to quality raw ingredients. So at the moment the harvest has kicked off and the mill is absolutely humming with tractors and grain coming in, and that is at the heart of everything we do. So to tie in with a sponsorship like the Champion of Champions, where the 9 qualifiers are hosted at the regional shows across the country, that's a huge thing for us as well, to be able to root in and support those regional shows, because they are so important to the whole agricultural industry, not just equine, and it's something that we feel really passionate about. I joined Red Mills about 2.5 years ago, and as Angus said, I've had ponies and the odd few horses over the years, and I realised I knew nothing about feeding horses when I joined Red Mills, particularly the show horse. Nutrition plays such an integral role in every part of producing your animals for the show ring, be that the young stock, right from literally the breeding sheds all the way to the main arena and the RDS. It plays such an integral role, and there's so much to be learned. I'm not going to bore you this evening, nor am I qualified this evening to talk to you about feeding your horses, but our nutritional team are, and that's a huge part of what we offer. The products speak for themselves, but it's how you use them. So if anybody has any queries around their own horses, their feeding programs, diets, the different products, our nutritional team are there to support. That can mean literally picking up the phone to the main office or meeting one of our team tomorrow at the show. That's a huge part of what we offer. The service is a huge element, and it's something we're really proud of. We have a great team of equine nutritionists on both the Red Mill side and also our partner supplement company for an equine. Our feeds are all complete feeds. We have a huge range, something there to fit the need of every animal, but sometimes they need that extra little support as well. These are competition horses, they are travelling, they are competing in warm climates, or they are, under that little bit of pressure from the ask that we have during a busy season, and sometimes the supplementation is key to that as well. And what we find at Red Mills is that our equine nutritionists are coming at it from both the feed side and the supplementation side. We like to keep things very simple. Nutrition is simple, and we don't like to overcomplicate things. So having that one person that you can talk to in terms of your overall diet plan can sometimes make your feeding program much more cost effective and much more efficient, and be it that you need a little bit more power on your animals, or you're trying to keep them a little bit more settled, or gain condition, or manage condition, these are all the things that our team can help you with. So as I said, we've been really, really proud to partner with Showing Ireland. It's been a new initiative for us over the last 2 years, and it's been fantastic to see the horses come through. Last year's final was incredible, and we look forward to another brilliant final tomorrow. And as I say, we can't wait to hear from the panel you have here this evening. It's a real honour to have them all in the one place to share all their insights, so I hope you enjoy the evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jen. Over there in the corner is Laura, and she's videoing the whole thing. All the evening, and all the speakers will be on the Connolly's website, so you'll get a rehash, and you've forgotten, you'll see it all over again. But now I'd like to introduce the varying speakers. In the first one over there on the right hand side is Richard Iggulden, probably the one of the best known producers of show horses in Ireland. He's won multiple champions. He's won in Dublin, he's won in England, he's won everywhere. He's done it all. And at the moment he would be considered one of the leading trainers of show riders and the whole aspects of equestrianism in the north of Ireland. I think what he said last year was fantastically interesting, and I think I'm really looking forward to hear what he has to say. Next to him is Tim Martin. Tim is an expert on buying young horses, foals and young horses, and producing them on to 3. It's all, and that is an art in its own. It's a difficult art, and it's getting harder and harder to find the article. But Tim knows his stuff, and what he has to say, I know will be interesting, and I know it'll do, because not everybody can afford to buy, horses made. They often want to buy 3-year-olds and things like that. And Tim has done that, done the process, sold abroad, and he's an expert in the field. Behind him is David Tatlow. David has won everything in the pointing field. He would be considered one of the top experts in England on the whole showing scene. He's done it all. He's done jumping. He's done everywhere. If you go over to Hoyes and you walk around Hoyes, the first thing you see is the picture of David Tatlow on the wall. He knows he is an expert, and he's a great supporter of Irish horses. He's always buying Irish horses. He loves Irish horses. And I think that's really important for all of you who are breeders over here, because what he does is he supports the industry in Ireland, and I think that's a fantastic thing to actually do. Next, we've got Rosemary Connors. Rosemary has won everything, 3 Dublin championships, but I think anybody who wants to ride a show horse, I got to sit back and watch Rosemary Connors ride. She has the perfect position for riding in a show ring. She knows exactly where to be in a show ring. She's won everything. She's won sides and that's won everything. But if you're just starting to ride a show horse, just watch Rosemary. She's always in the right position in the ring. Her body position is always perfect. Her horses are beautifully schooled, and she just is an expert in what she actually does. And she's very competitive as well, I can tell you. Next we have George Chapman here. George would be a master of foxhounds. He's hunted the island country for years and years and years. But he knows he's bought and sold so many horses in Ireland to so many people across the world. He goes to America, he judges in America. But one of the things he does for Ireland, and I think it's fantastic, he does all the stallion inspections, he does mare inspections, and I would consider him one of the people in Ireland who has a wealth of knowledge, and he's always generous in he always answers what you ask him, and he's always generous in his opinions. So it'll be very interesting to hear what he has to say, because everybody here has got a sort of a different aspect, and I think George's aspect will be interesting. He's been in the business a long time, he knows it backwards. He's bought hunters, show horses and everything. So I think we're in for a fascinating evening. And I think, first of all, I'd like to, every speaker is going to tell you what the subject is before they start. So I'm going to start with Richard, and I'm just going to hand him the microphone.
Thank you. Thank you everybody for coming. I'm here for the 2nd year. Can't believe I've been asked back again. You're going to hear a lot of things tonight about conformation, bits and pieces about what people look for in a hunter. I'm going to talk about what I look for in a hunter, but not actually the conformation, the deeper bits of it, the bits that a hunter has to be a showman to start with. He has to be pliable, he has to be mannered, he has to obviously look the part, but as I say, I'll not go into that, but you've got to have a horse that will let you ride him, will let you work with him. He has to walk into the ring and he has to go, look at me, I'm a champion. And if they don't do that, you're on a hiding to nothing. It doesn't matter how good looking the horse is, how well he moves, he's got to work for you. So, I see a lot of horses trotting around the ring and I just think, God, that hates what it's doing. And I think that there's a time for you to pull the lever and say, I think maybe we do something else with it, whether it's hunting, jumping, eventing, whatever. And I think we all know, and we've all ridden horses. I know, I remember a few years ago I had a draft horse in Dublin, and whatever happened in the championship, I got pushed into the main ring, and this horse wasn't probably the best horse I've ridden in the world. But he was a showman, and I remember going in and the steward said, oh, you shouldn't be in here, and I said, well, this guy just sent me in and he said, oh, go stand over there in the middle of the ring. So I stood and minding my own business, and all of a sudden I saw the 2 judges look across and point like this, and my horse was standing there with his head up, his ears pricked, and I thought, oh God, they've noticed me. And you know, I went on to win the championship that year, the Supreme in Dublin, and as I say, he wasn't the best horse I'd ever ridden, but he was a superstar in his head. And I think that's very important when you buy a horse. You've got to look and see that he enjoys what he does. And I'm not going to say much more about that, because I think we're going to talk about Conformation and all sorts of stuff, and I'm sure you're going to ask me some horrible questions later on. So I'm going to pass this on to the next speaker.
Thank you very much. I've been asked to take a look at producing and showing foals and yearlings, young stock, up to, we normally show up to 3-year-old. What our view is on the onward showing career of in the ridden class, etc., etc. I think as I said earlier there, we try to buy a number of foals, 3 or 4 foals each year with a view to going to the show ring. Our aim is ideally to go to show ring and then go on into the ridden classes. Equally so, that horse that foal has to have an alternative, because they don't all turn out as beauty queens. We need to be able to, as Richard says, go into an hunting field or eventing, whatever it happens to be. So in the first instance, very often we're looking at a foal. The idea is to, as you say, Richard, is to see a foal that grabs you and say, hey, look at me. And that, as I say, is the first thing that we look for. Beyond that, then once you get into the foal, we're starting to look at Conformation, looking for correctness. And at the end of the day, I've been a good believer that with any horse, if the foal's correct, it'll always be correct. If it hasn't the right Conformation as a foal, it'll never the right Conformation. Certainly won't improve as they get older. Very often they go the opposite direction. So for me, they've got to have Conformation, they've got to be able to walk, they've got to have look. All of that's got to be there from day one. Then we go from there. And I'd say, of course, we've got to look at the foal that he will go on then under saddle, etc. For us, as soon as we get the foals to come home, very often they haven't had a halter on, never mind even a hand on them. And for the first things we're then trying to do is to put a little bit of knowledge into them, to teach them to walk beside us, teach them that we can actually catch them. Teach them how to lead, how to load, how to get a bit into their mouth, standing still rather than jigging about. Eventually, as they'll come and trot along with us, they have natural balance, and hopefully we avoid teaching any bad habits. All of those things are very important, and those to me, it's vital that those are taught in the first 6-8 months of their life. If you don't teach them then you invariably end up that in later life, as I say, all these other habits come out in the ring, come out when you're handling them, and of course, as we've all seen in the ring before now, horse messes about, rears, does whatever, won't stand still, it just can't see him, and go on you go, and before you know it, you're way down the class. So for us, as I say, we start, as I say, at a very early age. As soon as they come home, try to get a head collar onto them, get a lead onto them, just standing bolted in the box, and as I say, nothing forceful, but as I say, it's done nice and easy and slowly, and if those things are done like that, the horse comes, the pole comes to us, and we get, to get it in handling, and as I say, they take it along gently. In tandem with that, feeding is a very important part. I'm a great believer that ideally, if I could get to the mare before the foal's even born, I'd want to get the mare properly fed, get her proper supplements and so on and so forth, so the foal's properly produced, as I say, when it comes to a foal, that it's got as I say, as much supplements and minerals in them as humanly possible. You tend to get as good a foal as possible. So as soon as they come home for us, we start to get them onto a feeding regime. Small amounts. I don't believe in overfeeding. I think the problem is you see so many, certainly in the young stock rings, you see big fat horses overproduced. Certainly, in particular, when you go into the yearling classes in the early part of the year, and you see these massive bullocks of horses that you think, well, where the heck do you go with that? By the time they're 3-year-old, they're maybe standing at 15.2, 15.3 at a yearling. You go to 3-year-old and they're standing 18 hands, you think, well, where the heck do we do with that boy? because he's far too big and he's not wanted. So correct feeding is vital. And as you all said earlier on, with regard to minerals, supplements, correct bone structure, get that laid down early on, you've half a chance. The other problem I see is that with these big, enormous yearlings, 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds, you invariably end up, as I say, very often that you have conformation problems, you have wind problems, all these things will manifest, as I say, with overfeeding and so on and so forth. Our job, as far as I'm concerned, is we want to sell a 3-year-old that can go on into the show ring, that is properly mannered, and that the show producer, the written producer, as I say, has something that they can actually work. But back again to bad habits and things like that there. One of the things that I have a pet hate for when I see young horses being sold in the ring, and as I say, they're walking, the handler can't go with them. So when there's up, they're pulling the horse's head round, the horse goes sideways, and invariably then when you win, as I say, under saddle, then the producer, the written producer, has spent the next 6 or 9 months trying to correct that. So it's very important to me that when a young horse is in the ring, that the person who's handling him, A, can walk with them, that it's not pulling them round, and B, is able to go to the trot, as they can actually go with them. There are better chances there of the judge actually being able to see that the horse is straight, rather than as he was turning around, he's twisted his leg, or whatever it happens to be. Now, this has always been a great debate, I think, between lead and written producers. As I say, a lot of written producers believe that we as lead producers say teach our horses bad habits. And I say it's critical, as I say, that we avoid those bad habits. As I say, that the horse is not one-sided. We try to avoid things like that there. Now, I would first admit that not everybody gets that one right, but as I say, to me it's vitally important that we understand that. As I say, there's no right answer for every horse, or every producer is different, everybody does different things, but I think, as I say, that we need to be aware that that when we go to sell a horse, and as I say, most lead producers are wanting to sell the horses 3-year-olds, that we're having a product that the customer wants. And if we can do that, then as I say, we have a chance of selling our horse. I know there's some of the panelists behind me are not in love with buying lead horses that have been in the show ring for 2 or 3 years. But saying that, I think when you take a look at the horse and hound every week, and you see the Robert Walkers, you see the Jill Days, you see a lot of these top producers producing horses year in, year out. They're coming over to Dublin, thankfully, and long may it continue, and they're buying our Irish horses because they love them, because they like the temperament, and because they like the way they're produced and so on and so forth. And they are going on into the English market, and they are doing the business over there. You only go to Hoyes every year, and you see, mark out, oh, that was such and such horse, that came from such and such, that came from such and such, all came from Ireland. Anyway, that's, I think, my big thing is, it's not as important not to overproduce a young horse. I'm a great believer that young horses should, as a yearling, a couple of shows a year, more than ample, and 2 and 3-year-old, 3 or 4 shows, again, more than ample. I think I see horses that are shown 6, 7, 8 times, sometimes more often. I can think of one particular producer, I think last year he showed his horse 14 times, a 3-year-old horse. That horse came to Dublin, he was totally sick. He went round the ring, his head was down, he was lethargic, he wasn't interested in what he was doing. He finished down the line. Nice enough horse, but he was overused, overabused. And I think, I'm a good believer that as 3-year-olds at that stage, we need to be showing a horse that will sell on, and as I say, if he's not overproduced, there's a customer for him. There's no right and wrong with all of this. Everybody has different ideas. That's my ideas, and I'll leave it at that.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you all for coming. As I say on Mastermind, my chosen subject is producing a 4-year-old for the show ring. I like to get them quite young. Disciplined handling from an early age is paramount. You don't want a boisterous horse trying to break it or trying to ride it, and it just makes for too much work. If your horse is sharp, I like to rug them in the field, leave them out at night. I'm a great believer in leaving them out as much as possible and taking them in then and working them during the day. Breaking them, I like to break them slowly. I do a lot of long reining. I vary that with popping a pole loose or on the lunge. Sometimes I prefer the lunge because you get a more controlled gait. Sometimes if you lose school, they're inclined to rush, or they might go too fast and it teaches them to rush. I just prefer to do it on the lunge and put a place pole in front of a fence. I do as much groundwork as possible before I ever get on board. I long rein on quiet laneways, I know which isn't easy these days with traffic. I long rein on circles, and when they're getting more balanced, I lunge in canter. I find lunging and canter very beneficial because it teaches them to go on the right leg, the correct leg, without having a row with them if you're riding them. And when you eventually get to ride them and you go on a circle and put your leg on, they'll pop into the right canter, no rows. Also, cantering on a circle I find can be difficult at first if they're big, awkward type horses. They find it hard to keep the canter, so I would always start with maybe just trying to canter one circle, then increase it to 2, 3, and they eventually get that inner hind leg under them, and it teaches them to balance and sit up in front. From there, I lunge a little bit over banks and drains. I think that gives them that fifth leg, it makes them clever. Then when I get on board, I get on top, and I always make them stand for about 20 seconds, sit there and pat them, because I always find when a judge gets on, if he's faffing about a leather length of stirrup or whatever, they know what it is to stand, and they'll be mannerly. When I get on board and ride, then I take them to nearby wood, quiet area, bring a companion with them, and that, unknowns to the horse, also establishes a nice forward walk, which is something that is hard to teach a horse for the show ring, and they do it without realising they're doing it, and you're going to get that nice forward walk, without a rushed walk, I mean a forward walk. Then I would do a little bit of cross-country schooling without over-facing them. I think that brings them on an awful lot as well. And I vary that then with arena work, trotting poles, circles, serpentines, all the usual razzmatazz in the arena. Ideally, if your country is favourable for hunting, a few days hunting does them the world of good. I mean, that's what they're supposed to do anyway. And I remember my dad used to always say a good day's hunting was like 6 weeks' work at home. They just learn so much. Horses going around them, behind them, in front of them, hounds working. It's a great education. I'm lucky I have the beach nearby, and I go down to the beach quite a bit, a few times a week. It's nice to vary it with their other work. And the first few days are never easy, of course. You're out in the open, waves are splashing, so you need an old back protector in case you come off or whatever. But once they get used to it, it's a great education because they have no support of the arena. You're out in a wide open space, and it teaches them to balance and go in a straight line. I also swear by the beach too for getting a horse to gallop. We've about a 5 furlong stretch of beach, and it's great up and down. You can ask them to extend, bring them back, working canter, extend again. I find it amazing. Training show is another nice outing for a horse. They get the whole idea of the public address, learn all that. A horse is, as I said again, running around them left and right. And they get used to horses passing them and going up behind them. Then I would try and introduce the double bridle or rugby pelham or whatever I feel is best for them. I feel if they're long-reined and they have a good mouth, They nearly always take a double bridle. I don't often use a chain. I normally use the leather strap with the links at either end. But then again, you have other horses that would prefer a rugby pelham or a different mouthpiece, and you just have to play along and try and get the best thing to have them sitting in a nice position in the ring, that they're not too low, that they're in the correct position with their head and neck, and they're accepting the bit, more importantly. The other thing that I have found over the years is some judges either have a long coat or ride in a more old-fashioned style, which means that their coat hits their back behind the saddle, and a lot of them hump with it. So sometimes if I have a fidgety or a feely horse, I'd often stick a towel in my jobbers and let it sit on their back, and it gets them used to if that happened. The other thing before you get into the ring is making sure you have a third party or a few people to sit on your horse before a judge gets up, that they have a different feel. For me, I like to get a man on it, that they're maybe a bit more stronger, aggressive maybe, and they need to do that before you ever get into the ring. Leading for the trot up is another. It's a terrible thing to see a horse being brought out and he's not leading up beside the rider. So I would do a lot of I use a long whip, and I would walk down along a post and rail, and it keeps them straight. Because the other pet hate is you have a horse leading up beside you, but he's turning, and his head is around you. And if he swings on the off leg, he'll swing twice as much if he's in a curve like that, rather than being straight. So that's and to get them to stand. It's nice to have them standing in front of a judge, that they'll stand and not move sideways, that you only have that little shop window to show off your horse, and it's paramount that they need to stand, look the part, prick their ears, get a bit of grass or whatever you have to do to make them look well. As I said, the field and the gallop. For 4-year-olds, or for any horse really, I don't like to do any more than 4 or 5 shows in the season. I like to only do 3 to 5 before Dublin. I think you don't want to overshow them. You want them to have as much presence as possible in the ring, and you need them to look the part. Also, regarding fat horses, I like my horses to be fit and looking well. I don't like to have them over fat. I like them fit well with a nice top line, and I don't like fat horses. I don't think it's right of them anyway to ask them to be ridden and galloped if they're too fat. I think that's it, guys. Thank you very much.
Just before Rosemary finishes, she's one of the top side saddle riders in Ireland, and I know she's going to say a few words about that, because I think it's a subject that I think it's important, and I think it's becoming very popular, and I think a lot of people want to know how to ride side saddle, and Rosemary, I would think, is probably one of the best side saddle riders in Ireland. So Rosemary, just a couple of quick points on side saddle riding and how to do it, how it's slightly different than riding astride, and just a couple of points for people. Is that okay?
I said thanks for throwing that on me. I suppose you need to make sure, first of all, that you have the right horse for it. I mean, if you have a horse that's going to be a bit fidgety with the saddle, or just not taking to the side saddle, well, then you know he's not a horse to put a side saddle on. I find I've often put a side saddle on a horse the morning of the class in Dublin. I'm sure the RDS wouldn't like to hear me saying that now, but I'm gone and won the class. I find if they ride well astride and they'll take the side saddle, they'll react to your weight rather than your no leg on that side. To see a horse going around side saddle, he needs to always be straight and bending. If you're on a right rein, that he bends away rather than going down sideways on 3 tracks. Then you know a horse isn't taken to the side saddle, he's missing your right leg. So it's very important that you sit, put all your weight, or a lot of your weight to the right, and that they react to the whip on the side, and try and keep them as straight as possible. Is that it? Is that okay? Thank you.
Sorry, I bounced that one on you. I did tell you before I was going to do it. And I'm going to hand you over to George.
Hello, good evening everybody. Well, I was born into farming and for the first 4 years I was farming. My father had a few horses, work horses, and always hunted. So from a very early age I got very interested in hunting, of course, first. But my father was a great believer in pushing me to wheel and deal and buy. So I started off with pigs and sheep, and eventually he sent me off, and I went off to this farmer, and I bought this 3-year-old horse. In the spring of the year, he hadn't been out of his stable or whatever it was all year, and he brought him out, and he came out snorting with his tail on his back, and I thought he was lovely. He really went around, and I bought him, I think it was about £35 that time, a lot of years ago. But I brought him home, and we let him out in the field, and he galloped to us that night, and my father went down the next morning, and he came back up. He used to light a pipe, and he said, "You'll learn me, boy, you'll learn me, boy." The horse, when he galloped all night, first thing he went down quite a bit in the back. He didn't carry his tail well after, and my father, who had a fair bit of knowledge of horses, stood behind him, and he was down on one hip. So the words he said to me was, "You'll learn me, boy." I lost money on him anyway. But I went on and I bought a nice 2-year-old filly then, £37 she cost. I put her in foal to a horse that time was very popular called Gypsy. And she bred a nice filly foal. I fed her very well as a 2-year-old. The late Lady Carew, Patrick's mother, came and bought it from me, and it was in the local papers. The price for a 2-year-old filly, £400 she gave me. And she came on to Dublin and she won. And she sold her on again for a lot of money. So that gave me a big interest then in going on to the showing. I hadn't been in the showing till then, so I started buying bits and pieces of horses, encouraged by my father. And the first things he always said to me was, listen, I started out in a little mini minor car, and he said to me, listen, if you have 4 new tyres on that mini minor, it'll bring you all over Ireland. But if you manage to get an old Rolls Royce somewhere with bad tyres, he said it'll only bring you a short distance up the road. So that got me thinking straight away about horses, and when we're hunting so much, that limbs were important. And I have to say, ever since, limbs is number one for me, and it grieves me a bit to show some horses now to people who doesn't look at the limbs or don't matter about limbs. It's all about something else. And I still think without limbs you have no horse. You must have limbs on your horse. And in regards to people saying about I'd be interested in traditional breds, it doesn't matter to me, I know a few lens here, if they're traditional bred or foreign breds, if they're good horses. But it worries me a lot, the road we're going down now, that we have plenty of them at home ourselves, warm bloods, but it worries me a bit that from breeding sheep, pigs, cattle, dogs, everything, hounds, everything, that I always was taught that when you got too far away from the purebred, that's the thoroughbred or the purebred in any animal, you can be in trouble, because you're going to get too many what you call throwbacks. And I worry now that we have every cross you can get coming in as the warm blood horses, and we're crossing them with our own mares that probably has a little bit of Connemara Irish draft, thoroughbred, and the Lord knows what else. And you may get the odd very good looking one, but the problem is you're going to have a lot of very mediocre, bad looking horses. And I see this happening quite a bit now, going around through judging the mares and stallions and all the rest, that the odd ones of them can look very good, but when you see their progeny then they can be very disappointing. And I definitely worry that the trend is to go right away from the thoroughbreds at the moment, and I think if we don't keep the thoroughbred somewhere in sight, we're going to be in far more trouble in years to come. It's definitely, I can see it happening, and I would definitely appeal to people to always think of, I know it's very tempting, the very popular horse that's jumping well and all the rest, but you can end up with what I would call the monstrosities, that you can end up with horses with legs turned backwards and everything. You must keep in sight of the limbs and the thoroughbred. So that's all. I'll answer questions to anyone later on, but that's all I say for the moment. Thank you very much.
David has actually decided to take the floor. I'm actually not going to sell him, because I don't know whether to sell him as a ribbon hunter, a show horse, or a jumper. But I'm going to sell him as something. But he's one of the most interesting people on horses. He's done everything with horses, and you know he's going to talk tonight on a subject which is very interesting. So David, it's up to you.
What I want to discuss with you a little bit is the situation of buying. Can you hear me or not? No.
I can't hear you.
Sorry, I thought is it turned on?
No, it's not.
Hello, hello. Hello, is it on? No. Is it on? Yeah. Okay. Right. What I wanted to talk to you about is the difference between judging a horse and buying a horse. Now, I mentioned that earlier on to Rosemary. She said, well, it's the same. You're stupid. I'm not really stupid, because there is a difference. When you are judging a horse, there is a big, big difference between buying a horse. When you're judging a horse, you have to find the best horse in that class quite quickly and give it its first prize. But when you're buying a horse, you've got to take it home. You've got to pay for it, and you either make money or you lose it. Now, I remember giving a talk one night in Ennis many, many years ago, and a lovely old Irish farmer came up to me and he said to me, Mr. Tatlow, I've enjoyed your evening, but how did you learn to become a judge? And I said, there is only one way, by signing checks. That is the only way you learn to become a judge. You either get better or you go broke. Right, in front of us here, we have a horse. He's 3 years of age, because that is my speciality. 3-year-olds that I look at, because I like to be able to think, I can see where they're going. I'm looking at the horse now, I'm judging the horse. So I've seen the horse go around the ring, and I've seen him walk, trot, canter and gallop, and we pull them in, and he's come out in front of me for confirmation. I'm looking at him. So I always start with the front leg, because if they haven't got a front leg, to me, they're nothing. If they haven't got a front leg, I'll repeat it, they're nothing. When I go to Goresbridge sales, I'll walk into a stable, if he's got a bad front leg, I walk out. So what are we looking for in the front leg? We're looking for a correct knee. We don't want him back at the knee. We want him to have a bit of forearm. We want him to have a proper tendon. Now, let's just try and put into perspective for one moment what is a correct front leg. I'd like you to imagine between the knee and the top of the joint, you have a piece of 2x2 wood or a piece of 4x4 wood, according to the size of the horse that you're dealing with. And that is what you want to fit in between the knee and the joint. It has got to be two perfect parallel lines, from the front of the cannon bone to the back of the tendon. You do not want horses that are tightened below the knee, and you do not want horses that are very, very long of the cannon bone. You look at his joints. As a 3-year-old, he ought to have nice, tidy joints. And if he hasn't got nice, tidy joints, you wonder about his breeding. Now, there is a certain amount of roundness in the front joint in the draft horse. So you have to take into consideration the pedigree of the horse when you're looking at those joints. The pastern is very important. It is so important. You don't hear many people talk about pasterns, but he's got to have strength in the pastern. There's no good in having a long pastern or a weak pastern, because if he has a long pastern, the flexibility of that, yes, sure, it might give him a good ride for a bit, but in 5 minutes he's got wingballs. And you don't want blemishes on show horses if you can help it. So you look to the front leg, and you turn round and you walk past him, and you look at his middle piece. You look to see if he's deep, if he's got a lot of daylight under him. We don't want a lot of daylight under him, but if he's a 3-year-old, he can be entitled to have a bit of daylight under him. You can also take that into consideration whether he's been done well or not. Then you look and you go to his hind leg. I'm looking at his hind leg now. So what are we looking at with his hind leg? We're looking because we want some second thigh. And we want to look at his hocks. We want to make sure he hasn't got any box spavins. That's a filling in front of his hocks. And we don't want to make any curves, which everybody in here knows what a curve is, I'm sure. And again, you look at that. Now, the hind leg is different in a show horse to a race horse, because if you look at some of the fastest animals in the world, the greyhounds and the cheetahs, they have a slightly hooky hind leg, which is speed. You don't want a hooky hind leg in a show horse. You don't want it too upright either. A horse can jump on a straight hind leg, but he can't gallop on a straight hind leg. So you really want that. It's very important that he has bone below the hock. It's very important he has bone below the hock. Again, you look at his pasterns, and then you walk and you look behind him. You look behind him and you say to the leader, can you push him back so he stands square? What are you looking at? You're looking at to see if his hips are level. You're looking at to see if he's got a spavin inside his hocks. Most of you know what a spavin is, and then you look to see if he's base narrow or base wide, and then you look at that. But don't forget you're getting this on the walk, because you've got 20 more horses to judge in a minute. So you look around the other side, not like some people who judged in Dublin a few years ago and he looked at one side. You look at the other side to see if he's got the same on the hind leg. Make sure he's got no curves there, and you look around to him there, and you walk at his middle piece. His middle piece should be the same both sides, and you look at the front leg. Now, ladies and gentlemen, they don't always have a pair of front legs. I can assure you they do not always have a pair of front legs. So you can look at that. Again, what you're looking at, you don't want him back at the knee. If he's slightly forward at the knee, I love it. If he's long of his shank, you worry about it. Again for the pasterns, and then you stand in front of him. Now, this is as important as anything else. You stand in front of him. You make sure the leader stands him up square in front of you. And that he doesn't want to be standing like that, he doesn't want to be standing like that. I'd rather have a horse pigeon-toed than straight-footed. And there you go, and then you start off. You always end up where you start off. You look at the top line. The top line, the limbs come from the mother, the top line comes from the manger. Then you have a look at him, his top line, and you look at his head. Because the head is very, very important. If you're looking to buy a big horse, which I quite like, if he's got no head, he's got nothing to grow to. I promise you, a big, plain, ugly head as a 3-year-old is never a big, plain, ugly head as an older horse, when his body grows to it and his neck grows to it. And you look at his top line and you make sure that he's not dippy at his back, and you then say to your leader to walk him away. And you look at the walk. The walk is so important, and he wants to be able to get straight into gear with his walk, not mince along before he gets into gear. Straight into gear, like a marching soldier. Walk, and then he trots back. Now we come to the trot. The trot is the most controversial pace. You must remember that trot is not a natural pace in a horse. In the wild, they do not have to trot. They walk for their feed, and they flee from their predators. The trot is not a natural pace. It is the only pace that a rider can really improve a horse. You cannot improve the walk. The walk is God-given, and you can't really improve it. The only way you can get the best out of a walk to make sure his mind is settled. Because a horse who's not settled in his mind, he doesn't give the best of his walk. I don't like these fancy trots. I've never caught a fox out hunting at the trot. And I don't like these fancy extravagant trots. I like a nice, level trot. 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't want 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't like that. And it's not necessary in a show horse. And you trot him off, and you make sure that he's straight. He wants to be as straight as he can possibly can be. Then you've got another 20 more to do. So you can't spend all that time with him. And the difference between buying a horse. Let's go to buying a horse. You're not in so much of a hurry. First of all, you've got to look at him. What are you buying him as? All my great champions have been what they're supposed to be, what it says on the tin. A lightweight, a middleweight, or a heavyweight. Not a muddleweight. The muddleweights are difficult to just place. Is he going to be a big lightweight or a little middleweight? Is he going to be a big middleweight or a little heavyweight? You need to look at him, and the head can tell you so very much. Obviously, the limbs are the same as what you're looking at. When you're buying a horse, you go around the horse exactly the same for the limbs. But you also have to take into consideration how well he's been done or not been done. And you have to take into consideration his breeding then. You don't have to take into consideration his breeding when you're judging a horse. When you're judging a horse, all you have to do is to find the best horse in that class. You don't have to leave it like him, because you're not going to buy him. You don't have to take him home. You just have to find the best horse in that class. But buying a horse is totally different. You're putting your money down, so you've got to be extra careful. You've got to be extra careful about his lightness of foot. I am fanatical about lightness of foot. Whether it's in a foal or a yearling with a 2-year-old, and if you're at all in doubt at all about a horse, turn your back on him and hear if he goes clump, 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 clump. He's going to be hard on himself. And if he's light and you want to see a horse put his toe down, I hate to see a horse put his heel down first. And particularly when they're galloping, I hate to see a horse land on his heels. He's got to land light, and it's very important that he's light, because his limbs will wear a lot longer. Obviously, you have to then, when you're buying this horse, you have to sort of worry about him being vetted, and it is important that you have a 99% certainty whether you think he's going to go through a vet, because I shouldn't be saying this, but I'm going to say it. I haven't had many horses fail the vet in Ireland, and some of them don't get as religious a vetting as they might. And certainly some of the Broadbridge horses do get through quite a bit. But you have to be very careful. You have to make sure that they're not shiverers. And many a time we've been into a horse, oh, don't go near his hind legs because he'll kick your head off you. And you think, uh-oh, hello, what's the problem here? And you go and you touch a stick and you pick his foot up in the air, and you know
Thank you very much, David. I think we've had a fantastic sort of masterclass, really, is what it is, in all aspects of horses, all sort of various things. Everybody's come up with a different slant on horses. That's why the subject and horses is such an interesting subject. Now I think we come to the most important part of the evening, and that is your questions. And it would be nice if you stood up and asked a question. And I know that the panel themselves will interact with what you're saying. So could I start off with a question, please? Yes?
The 3-year-old, how do you know it's a 3-year-old with his teeth? What are a 3-year-old's teeth like? Does that make sense?
What are 3-year-old teeth like?
Yeah. How many of them are there?
I don't really know what you mean. Are you saying, do any of us know how old a horse is?
Say a 3-year-old, how many rib teeth and how many permanent teeth do they have?
What time of the year are you betting this horse?
Yeah,
It's a huge difference. It's a very, very difficult question to answer. I don't know whether you are trying to trick us, my love.
No, I'm not.
Or not. If you're trying to trick us, you're succeeding. If you're not trying to trick us, it's very, very difficult. You can have, for instance, that we have a July 4-year-old that's here tomorrow, and he's only just, no, he's 5 now, but when he won in Balmoral last year, he was 3 and 10 months, and you could have got away with anything with his teeth. You have to remember that a few years ago there was a very big veterinary exposure on teeth, and there were 12 very prominent veterinary surgeons who were asked to go and adjudicate on teeth on thoroughbred horses at Newmarket. Okay? And they brought 10 horses, these 12 vets had 10 horses, and the 12 vets got 8 of them wrong. And they were thoroughbred horses, so you knew how old they were. So unless you're an absolute brilliant lady with teeth and you're going to tell us about it, we are going to hedge that one, my love.
Passports are very handy.
Does anybody else in the panel want to sort of say anything about that? Okay, we move on to the next question then.
Totally away from teeth. It was just the fact that in different shows throughout the country now, you get classes that are either named a lightweight class or a heavyweight class. For instance, today. And if you have a middleweight horse, what is the correct class to enter him into?
Well, I think that is a very, very good question. They shouldn't be put down as a lightweight and heavyweight. They should be put down as a lightweight and an over 37 stone. Because judges look at these things and they say they look at the thing, and the judge must always judge the schedule. So do you, you may have a
have a little bit of bone and maybe lack a little bit of quality, then you should go on the heavyweight. And I think the judges will accept that. I think a middleweight would probably just get caught for a bit of class in a lightweight division. So I think if you have a little bit of bone, height, and lack a tiny bit of quality, you're better in a middle heavy.
I think I'm right in saying that for years ago or in past that the break between the light and the heavy horses were mentioned as 13 stone 7, and I think this is a new thing that has come along in the last few years, that we're getting these lightweight, heavyweight classes, and I think it's probably because some of the shows are not actually getting the numbers of horses that they need. So I think from a judge's point of view, it's much easier if you're judging up to 13.7 and over 13.7 rather than heavy or light, because you know that puts your middleweight horse at a real disadvantage. Is he this or is he that? So if he carries 13 stone 7, he's what he is. Yeah.
I have one hot chest on this one, coming from a slightly different angle, and that is that I've stewarded through Balmain and Dublin for a lifetime, and one of the things that I think that causes the problems you're talking about, Lynn, is the fact that often judges, well, certainly don't have a schedule in their hand, and I don't think that the stewards, the senior steward in the class, actually tells them what they're supposed to be judging. So you go into the judge's stand and say, oh, it's a heavyweight class, or whatever it happens to be. But if he's told it's over 13.7, it's under 13.7, then the judge knows exactly what he's supposed to be judging. And I think that's one of the major problems we have in shows today. It is hard to get volunteers to come and steward, and more importantly, I know certainly that there's very few classes or very few seminars where stewards actually explain to them, to bring the like of these guys here who've done it all their lives and say, look, this is the sort of information I need to learn, to know what I'm going to judge.
I feel that this will be something always controversial, the same as winning today and being put down tomorrow. You'll always have controversy there. Everyone will have a different opinion. And in regards to people will say, oh, I measured him under the knee, he has 10 inches of bone, and so on. But you can have a very blood horse, near enough turbid, could measure 10 inches of bone, and you could have a plainer type horse measure 9.5, and he would look to the eye to be more of the heavyweight than the 10 inches of bone. So you're always going to have this controversy, in my opinion, of is the judge's opinion on the day as the same as the judge's opinion when we think he's right and we think he's wrong. It's going to be always that problem about weights. Because I find going to Dublin with horses every year, I'm always worrying, is he just borderline, is he heavyweight or is he lightweight? And immediately I like to hear who's the judges. Does he like more quality or otherwise? So it's back to the judge again, in my opinion.
Anybody else?
I'd just like to ask a question about something similar. Is measurement, in terms of small hunters, costs, we're seeing giants of horses going into classes now that are supposed to have a recorded measurement, and they're obviously well over their height. So I think it's a huge disadvantage if you're, on the height or just under, and you're going up against these horses that are getting in. I think as judges, what's your take on that?
Well, as a judge, we can't really do anything. Oh, sorry. As a judge, we really can't do anything in the middle of the ring. If somebody comes in and they've got a certificate, we're stuffed. We can't go against that because what can we do apart from measure them? And that's not going to happen. So I think really at the end of the day, it's got to go back to the societies. Well, in England, certainly the societies over here, our vets have got to be stricter. Everybody's got to do the thing right. And as far as I can see at the moment, it's not done right, being realistic. And until somebody takes a hold of it and shakes it by the neck and says, look, we've got to get this right, and it's going to be a level playing field for everybody, it's going to continue as it is.
I just agree with Richard.
Yeah. I think it was David Tatlow told me this. Sometimes I think that maybe there's some vets here, but sometimes I think that it's like a certain stallion owner in England, and I think it was David told me he had 4 sticks and they all measured a bit different, and I think that some of the vets must have a few extra measuring things too. I don't know, but to me it looks a bit different anyway.
Everybody totally agrees with you. How do you solve it? Okay? You tell us how to solve it. We listen to you. We'd love you to tell us how to solve it. You have to remember that on January the 1st, that you can measure your horse. He's been out all winter. If you want him to, you can leave him out for a fortnight before January the 1st, 2nd, 3rd or 4th. And you can bring him in. He will genuinely measure that 158 or 153. Make no mistake, all vets are not crooked. They will measure that horse on the day. You then get him in and you feed him, and he grows, and he not grows up, but he physically bolsters himself, and then he looks a lot bigger. He still genuinely measured that day. Now, whether we should measure our horses on March the 1st, I personally would like a lot of random. When I was president of the British Show Horse Association, that you put forward these views to the committee, and I wanted to have a lot of random testing for heights. And we do get that in England now. We can pull a horse as a society, we can pull a horse, we can see one of George's horses, one of Rosemary's horses, one of my horses, one of Richard's horses, one of this gentleman's horses, and we can say, I'd like to measure your horse, please. And they cannot stop you doing that. If they want to stop you doing it, then you can't show it. And I would like to see more of that. And I think if we had more of that, it would definitely pull the rug from under a few people's feet. What really does seriously bug me is that I know there are people in England who will send a horse 500 miles with 500 quid to get a certificate, and that's not right. That's seriously is not right. But I promise you it happens. So if it happens there, it happens here. And we know it happens here just as well as it happens at home. So we're all with you. We're all with you. You find an answer to it, and you tell us the answer, and we'll play ball with you.
20 or 30 years ago, I started the ponies in Balmoral every year, and every year there was considerable controversy over heights and so on and so forth. And the interesting thing about it was that at that time there was quite a lot of ponies being brought in from England, and they came in with their JMB measuring certificates. Now I'm no expert on heights and so on and so forth in terms of all these measurements, and I'm free with that. But my understanding was at that time that the JMB, you took your pony, whatever it happened to be, to a vet, your vet. As David said, depending what time of year you vet, you got it measured, all sorts of things can happen. Equally so, if the vet happened to be your own vet and knew you very well, maybe he could be a little bit more lenient than others.
We can't vet them in England.
No?
No, you can't vet them in England.
Right.
Your own vet can't vet the horse.
Fine. Well, and that's a good thing. Certainly here, I think with the measuring, you've got to go to a centre, and I think there's answer on something like that. I don't know. But that's what certainly happened, as I say, quite a number of years ago. And as I say, it did cause a lot of controversy. There was threats of legal action and all sorts of things. And I think society will probably shy away from things like that. And that's part of the problem.
Another question, please. Yes, Jane.
Just on the subject of measuring, could I ask the panel what's their idea of a preferable height for a maxi cob?
Richard, go.
Well, my problem with maxi cobs are that if they're too big, they're not cobs. They lose that short, square blockiness that cobs have. And you see these things of like 16.1 I mean, I saw one last year. He must have been almost 17 hands. And I mean, that's a horse. It's not a cob. And I'm not sure that really a maxi cob is a great thing, because I think it is making the cobs, it's sort of devaluing them a bit for me. And I never did really like maxi cobs, but there are some of them which are, I think, probably right and true. But a lot of them, I think, they're just big horses. And I think they're awful things, to be honest with you. So there, I've said enough.
Again, I will tell you that I don't want to harp on my time when I was president of the Showhack Society, but it did come up, and I tried to get a guide, not a guaranteed measurement. We don't, with enough horses get measured. I wanted to get a guide height of 15.3, because that is the same height as a show hack. The show hack goes to 15.3. Now, what is the idea of a cob? The idea of a cob is for elderly, well-built ladies and gentlemen to get on and ride it. It has got to be quiet, and it has not got to be too big. And the height of the cob is important. I do not like maxi cobs. I never have been very keen on them coming in. I am very opposed to them being brought into the cob championships. There is no need for them, and they haven't done a good service other than they fill very well. I love judging with my daughter Lorraine, who rides and did Conformation, and I did the maxi cobs at the Royal International Horse Show about 3 years ago, and they were a hodgepodge of non-entities, and some could walk, some couldn't walk, and the one that had been winning an awful lot was no more of a cob than I am Father Christmas. He hadn't got a cob's front leg, he hadn't got a cob's hind leg, he had a gallop like a small hunter, and it was ridiculous that he'd been winning all these maxi cob classes. And I don't think it's been a good innovation, but you have to accept they are here to stay. You're not going to get rid of them because they're popular and they're here to stay. But I would like to see a guideline height of 15.3, which means 16 hands anyway, and a cob that's over 16 hands really, as Richard quite openly said, is not a cob.
I would agree with David to a point, but I'm not so sure about this middle-aged lady thing, because I think we have some well-known ones that wouldn't be doing well, that wouldn't be referred to as middle-aged ladies, but are elderly. But anyway, I think it was initially brought in where cobs just got measured out, and people had paid quite a bit of money for a cob, and it was measured out. So I would agree fully that it should be definitely a 15.3, meaning that they cannot be over 16 hands. I think it's ridiculous to a 16.1 cob, because he's not a cob. So I think 15.3 with the guideline, and definitely should not measure over 16. But I think they're here to stay. There's quite a few of them being bred. They're just people try to breed cobs. You can't breed them; they just happen. And I think it's a pity that that there isn't a place for these just slightly overgrown cobs. Okay.
Anybody else? Come on, good. You.
On the subject of breeding, will a parrot-mouthed sire or a parrot-mouthed stallion sire parrot-mouthed progeny?
I wouldn't touch a parrot-mouse stallion with a 40-foot large bull. Wasn't a mare.
I agree, and I think at times breeding is a lottery, so you never know.
No, I think if you go down the road of yes, of course, they can maybe be the odd one that will not breed one that way at all, but it's not looked on as a soundness as such. Maybe it's different to soundness, but I wouldn't encourage anyone to go to such a sire, because I think it's hard enough to have sound horses without encouraging that type of thing.
Can I ask a question?
Yes?
David, have you ever, when you were talking about buying horses earlier, have you ever missed one and looked and thought, oh, I wish I'd bought that horse when you saw it doing something?
Your neighbour has put you up to this. I know very well where this is going, and it's not good. But I will tell you the story that she knows, and this is what she wants me to say. I was given the honour of judging at Tina Healy's show one year, and it is always the Monday before Dublin. And in the judging at Tina Healy's show, there was a class which says utility class. I hadn't got a bloody clue what a utility horse was, and I probably don't know what I still have now. And I stupidly asked a lady what a utility horse was, and she was the head girl for, who was the guy from Blackwater and used to have all the horses? Jack Deacon. Jack Deacon's head girl. Right, okay, so she stitched me up really good and proper, and she said, what you're looking for is very much a small hunter. So I go to and there were hundreds of them came in, of every single shape and size, and I was young and rode them all and went through the whole lot, and I clearly to this day remember calling in one about 4th or 5th last, a pale chestnut horse with a blonde mane and tail, his mane down to his knees and his tail down to the floor. And he did give me a really good ride. I clearly remember him giving me a really good ride, and I think I pulled him up from 42nd to about 33rd. That was Tina Healy over. Monday that was, Tuesday went, Wednesday went, Thursday went. I was walking from the gates, the back gates where you come into Dublin now, and there is a little cob coming out of the ring with his red rosette on, and he is going some spank in his trot. And I was being asked by a guy in England to try and see if I saw a really nice lightweight cob. Whoa, 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 I say to the fella. I do like your cob. You didn't like him on Monday. I promise you, this was the little thing that he had bought with a blonde mane and tail that was 42nd to 33rd. He'd sheared its Who? Pat Kilbride, right? But he snapped my head off. You didn't like him on Monday. And I had to put my hand in the air, and that's what they wanted me to shame myself into the story. What could you for doing it?
Can we have another question, please?
Yes. Could you not just tell us something rotten about Jane?
Pay no attention to what they're saying up here. Can I have the question, please?
Question for you on bitting with show horses. Something I'm quite interested in is the bitting side of things. I found lately, well, I've judged a few times and been quite disappointed to see that quite a lot of young horses, in my opinion, are completely overbitted. The swale bit is one big no-no I don't particularly like in young horses, but it seems to be using more and more as I don't know what the way I call it, a weapon in the horse's mouth of a young horse to make them lighter in the showroom. But what's your opinion on bitting these young horses? Is it wrong to see a 4-year-old in a snaffle if it's going correctly?
No.
I have to say I'd like to see a 4-year-old in a snaffle, especially if he's going nicely. I do agree with you with young horses being overbitted. I think if you want to put a double rein on, you can use a rugby pelham. It's just like a snaffle mouthpiece. Other than that, I prefer them in a snaffle. I mean, we all know when we ride a horse that if they don't accept the bit, it affects their movement, especially their trot and canter. And it's terrible to ruin a young horse by putting a stronger, heavier bit on. So that's my opinion. The lighter the better.
If you were judging and the 4-year-old came in and it had just an example as well, which we all know is a very strong bit, would you look at that and would you be thinking, hang on a second?
I would definitely penalise it a bit. Yeah. And I mean, I've shown a 4-year-old in Dublin in a snaffle. Yeah.
The swale bits should be banned. They are horrendous things, absolutely horrendous things. And again, when I was in the committee, I wanted to get them banned, and they virtually nearly are banned now. There's not a ban put on them. I think it's very important. I'm a great believer in still head carriages, and I like to see a high head carriage. The correct head carriage for a horse has always been when the rein from the corner of the mouth is level with the ground to his withers. So many you see now coming up from the mouth to the hand. The bloody incessant jaw reins that people have on them now, just a ruination of horses' head carriages. They really are the ruination. It's a great skill using a draw rein. It was a great skill, and that the people get their heads down. So who wants to ride a horse with his poll level with his withers? I mean, that's where they're getting some of them now. They really are getting them so low, and that's not only over-bridling them, it is these incessant behaviour with these draw reins. I love a horse that I love to see all the plats and half the forelock. Now that might be a strange thing for a lot of people, but I love to see all the plats and half the forelock. And you won't get that with being over-bridled.
It's a very interesting subject, bitting, and if you went into my saddle room, you would see anybody that's been there, probably 400 bits of all shapes and sizes. Some of them would stop elephants, some of them, plain snaffles, very simple bits. But the way I look at it is that if a horse goes well in any bit, then that's the bit for him. If the horse goes badly, it's probably a mixture of the bit's too strong or the jockey's not good enough. So the thing you don't want to see is somebody inexperienced riding a horse with a bit that's too severe. The horse is not doing his job. And actually, David touched on this thing about horses going downhill. What I find nowadays, when you're watching horses trot round, everybody is nag, 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 instead of letting the horses do their job. And, you know, they're hunters. And if you're out in the hunting field, you're not trying to make the horse go with his head between his legs, because you're watching the hounds going and you just want to sit on a horse that's cantering across the field or trotting across the field or whatever, light in your hand, going forward, doing his job, and that's what should transfer into the show ring. So you get on, your horse picks up, trots off, canters off. You want to have them light in your hand, depending on what bit you need, because let's face it, some young horses, some old horses, they're hard of the mouths, and I would rather see something a little bit severer in the mouth and the horse do his job right. And the other thing that drives me bananas is that some of these pony classes, they say, oh, you can't put a strong bit in a pony's mouth because it's much better for the kid to get run away with and, you know, almost get killed because somebody thinks you can't be too severe on the pony. I think it's all about what is safe.
You have to remember that the correct head carriage for any horse is his nose in front of his eyes. You do not want a horse's nose behind his eyes. You do not want a horse leading with his brow band. And if you look at nearly the perfect head carriage you can get for a horse, is any horse trotting down the road, going to the meet on a slack rein. He's got his head up, he's looking where he's going, and that's the head carriage you want to aim at. That is the one you want to aim at when you're doing anything with the horse. You do not want the nose behind their eyes. You do not want them leading with their brow band.
Another question, please?
Justice Judges, which is more important, confirmation or ride?
Well, I'd have to say confirmation, even though the ride is very important as well. But all horses were meant to do something, not just trot around forever. I mean, they're supposed to hunt, show jump, event or something. That's what horses are bred for. And if you haven't got proper confirmation, let them be a good ride, you won't be riding them very long because you'll have no horse. That's my opinion.
Well, I think if you have two horses of the same quality ride-wise, confirmation certainly comes into it then.
I'm a fanatical confirmation man. You've got to have the confirmation first. You cannot take the horse home and improve his confirmation. You can take the horse home and improve his ride. But it's got to be, I was very, very disappointed, and I get into awful trouble from speaking my mind. Last year in Dublin, I thought it was a hodgepodge of judging, whereas the ride seemed to overrule the confirmation in all three classes and all the championships. And I do not like to see that, because a confirmation, if we lose confirmation, we lose the horse. We've got to keep confirmation as paramount. It is the most important thing. You can teach people to ride, but you can't teach confirmation to everybody.
All right. I think, again, this is a really difficult question, because at the end of the day, if you're going to go hunting and sit on this horse for 4 or 5 hours, if it's uncomfortable, you're going to have a bloody awful day. And sometimes you can get a horse that is not particularly good mover, is not particularly got a good front leg, but actually is quite a good ride. So I think it's horses for courses, and I don't think that's a hard and fast rule that you've got to go for complete confirmation and forget the ride. I think sometimes you've got to be, you know, as a judge, and I know now know that I judge Conformation more than I obviously ride. I don't ride now. So, you know, I would say to my ride judge, is that comfortable? That looked really good. It galloped, it rode well. So I might lean towards the ride because if you're going to spend your whole day on the thing, it wants to be comfortable. I know that's maybe not what everybody else is thinking here, but that's my thoughts.
I certainly would agree that Conformation, I think, is very, very important. Coming from the lane horse side of things, we've got to get Conformation dead right. I slightly disagree with Richard. At the end of the day, you're talking riding all day. This is a show class. I assume you're talking about in a show class. You know, in a show class, you've got to have both. You've got to have good Conformation. You know, a horrible Conformation, something wrong with him. Doesn't matter how good he rides. He's not a show horse. So therefore, you've got to have a bit of both.
Another question, please.
How much can you forgive a 4-year-old in an open class?
Well, as somebody that's rode 4-year-olds when I was riding in Dublin, I certainly would forgive them all the time. It sickens me now, as it did today, I would say, to see bad-looking horses just because they were 10, 12 or 15 years of age. The judge was able to ride them, being a real good-looking fancy horse being put away down for that. And I think we are a country that sell a lot of horses. We don't, there are more people maybe keeping them on now than there was some years ago, but we still basically sell a lot of our horses. And I think the 4-year-old is entitled, unless he misbehaves badly, is entitled to get the benefit of their towards. I would call some of the horses, I won't look at Mr. MacDonald here saying that he has a nice horse which is a few years old, but some of the horses that are being put up to me are as disgraceful on the judge's end to put them up ahead of nice young horses. That's my opinion.
I agree with George to a point, and we're probably singing off the same hymn sheet that we should forgive them to a point. If they misbehave, if they nap, if they're very naughty, then they shouldn't be in the lineup or in the running for a winning class.
When I'm judging, I like to walk out of the ring very happy with my decision in having given the horse that I think is the best horse in the class, the Red Rosette. In the 4-year-old class, I think it is quite ridiculous when they're penalised for taking a wrong lead and little errors of shying at kids running up and down the side of the ring. And I hate to see a lovely young horse penalised from little errors. Now, how do you do that when you go into an open class? You've decided that your 4-year-old is good enough to go into the open class. So he's got to be going fairly well. Now, if you've got a 5-year-old horse who has a bit of a frisk and a buck, and he's just a little bit arsey, and you've got a 4-year-old who's gone perfectly well, then the 4-year-old is perfectly entitled to beat him. But you put that the other way round. You put your 5-year-old horse, who goes perfectly well, and you've got your 4-year-old horse, who takes a couple of wrong leads, and he shies at the ice cream man, and he has a little bit of a buck. What do you do then? It's an open class, don't forget. You're having to judge him as an open horse. Consequently, I think that you're entitled to put the horse who goes a little bit better if he's a year older than the 4-year-old. But in a 4-year-old class, I will forgive them most things apart from trying to deck you or trying to take you out of the ring. I think that's what 4-year-old classes are for. young and inexperienced. And if you can't have classes for young and experienced horses without them being penalised, it's a shame.
I'm actually happy with what David said for once tonight. That's great. I think a 4-year-old belongs in a 4-year-old class, and I think if you try and go against older horses, I think you're asking too much of a 4-year-old. You're expecting too much. So no, I think there's a place and a time for the 4-year-old to be in.
Another question, please.
I just was interested to know what the panel's view is on holding horse shows on artificial surfaces as against greenfield sites.
We live in Ireland, so artificial surfaces are the saviour of us at the spring of the year, and I think that it's lovely to get onto grass, especially the likes of here where the rings are so good, but I think at the beginning of the season we have to use these surfaces. I think people talk too much about the difference between one and t'other. I think most horses seem to handle the thing quite well. So I think it's a mix. I think we have to go to both places. And I think if we can get onto grass, that's great. But it's better to show on a surface and not show at all. That's, I think, the way I would feel about it.
A few years ago, my beloved Royal Show put in a track around the outside of the main arena, which you could ride on. Often I chose to ride inside that track on the grass, and I don't really know whether it made any better or any worse, but I think you can get a little bit more step out of a horse on grass than you can out of an artificial arena. They have now introduced a track in Ring 5 at the Royal International Horse Show at Hickstead. When you come up the hill, you can come up the hill on an artificial surface. We had an outside rings at the Royal that came in for the 4-year-olds and the novices. That was great when the ground was hard, and I think that, as Richard said, the horses, I think, are very adaptable. For instance, the late John Dunlop would often run horses in a race on grass, but they've never had a gallop on grass. They've been trained all the time on artificial surfaces, and he said it didn't make a toughness difference to them. I don't know whether other trainers will agree with that, but of course now you go to Newmarket, you've got the Albahathry Gallop, and you've got the Old Vic Gallop, and you've got the this Gallop and the that Gallop, that you can use all the year round when the ground is either hard or too soft. I think there is no doubt that the artificial surface is here to stay.
I think grass is the cream of the crop, but I agree with Richard. If it means the show isn't going to be held only on an all-weather surface, well then I think that's a good thing.
Yes, I agree. For in the spring of the year, the surfaces are very handy, and it means that we can go showing. Whereas if it's very wet, either the landowner doesn't want it or it's too wet to go on. But I still say it's a pity that there isn't more of the grass surfaces, and I think it definitely plays into the hands of some of the warm blood horses that maybe it's because of the tradition the Irish horse will handle an uphill, downhill field far better than the one. I've no doubt in my mind watching shows all the time. If the field is a bit unlevel and that, the Irish horse will handle it far better than the one. But I'm definite about that.
Another question, please. Tell me one more. Somewhere. Back.
What's your view on youth makeup and profiling horses and showing? Yeah.
I think some horses look well, but I think it can be overdone big time on eyes and things, definitely.
Totally agree. I think too much makeup is not a good thing. You know, you want your natural horse. Certainly if it was small blemish or something like that, there you dark it in, fine. But I think as they beyond that, I think it's a good one.
A good wash and a good grooming is a hell of a lot better than these bloody sprays.
That's all right, you just said it all. Any other questions?
Thank you very much for your questions. I thought it was very interesting, and I also want to thank all our speakers because I thought they covered the subject honestly, straightforwardly, and I think everybody's got a broad spectrum of views on from Tim all the way across through various areas of what you do and how you do it. And I know we're all going to have something to eat now, and don't let them go. If you've got a question, you're too shy to ask it now, pin him in a corner and ask him the question right there. Don't let him out. So I'd like you all to thank you very much for coming. I hope you enjoyed it. I think our speakers enjoyed it. I certainly enjoyed it. And looking around the room, I think everybody was actually paying attention, and I think that's fantastic. People concentrated. So I think, and I also want to say, Lauren down here is actually recording it, and it'll be up on the Connolly's website. And once again, I'd like to thank Jane Davis of Connolly's for the support and the continued support. And also to say to Edmund, thank you again for allowing us this room to actually get the views of the industry and the people in general involved. Thank you very much. Thank you.